Good morning, one and all. Today we have an interesting session coming on that is about the perioperative management, and we have got a wonderful speaker, Dr. Bhavana. She is MD in geriatric medicine, and I think she will be elaborating on the topic because we know this perioperative period there are 3 or 4 things that we have to address.
Yes, sir.
One thing is it is a frail patient. So why that fracture has come? Is there any nutritional compromise, any dyslipidemia, or what has added to that fracture? Number two, what may be things that may be interfering with the anesthesia and the surgical workup? And the third thing, maybe the anticoagulants, antiplatelets, what drugs they are on. So everything put together on a holistic way, we may be able to better serve the patient. And it is up to you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today and present on topic fragility fractures in older adults, a perioperative care pathway. In next 15 minutes, I'll be discussing about the challenges we face in patients while managing perioperative fracture and addressing the issues. This is the outline for my presentation to help you follow along. And fragility fracture is fracture that happens because of minimal trauma. For example, falling from standing height or even less, and no identifiable trauma at all sometimes. It is important because it leads to dependence and financial burden, poor quality of life, mortality in long term and short term, both. Hip fracture is among the most serious fragility fractures with incidence of 1 in 1000 among the 50 plus population. Mortality increases with increase in age, and it is even higher in unoperated patients. The role of geriatrician while managing fragility fracture is to identify and treat correctable factors so that surgery is not delayed, give post-operative care and medical rehabilitation, and prevent the next fracture, which has been discussed in detail in the previous section, like fall assessment and prevention. So the challenges we face in perioperative period are diagnosis, detailed history and comprehensive geriatric assessment, managing cardiovascular conditions like valvular heart disease, heart failure, conduction defects, atrial fibrillation, managing anticoagulants and antiplatelets, assessing fluid and electrolyte requirement, and optimizing blood sugar level, managing anemia, chronic kidney disease and pulmonary diseases, reviewing medications, providing antibiotic prophylaxis, thromboembolic prophylaxis. The important thing is DNI and DNR. Many patients need are in a stage of their life where they might need end of life care. The relatives should be informed pre-operatively that which treatment will be helpful for the patient and which might be harmful. So it is important to inform them in prior and tell them about the need for DNI and DNR. Coming to diagnosis, it is suspected in all patients presenting with a typical history, that is hip pain following trauma. It is easily diagnosed with the help of radiograph, AP view, lateral view, or 10-degree internal rotated view is taken usually with sensitivity of 90 to 98%. And in case of occult fracture where radiographs are not able to diagnose the fracture, MRI is the gold standard. In case where we don't have MRI facility available within 24 hours of presentation, CT scan is recommended. Managing pain in perioperative period is crucial to reduce post-operative complications and reduce the functional decline. It is easily assessed with the help of numerical rating scale, visual analog scale in patient with normal cognition, and in patient with cognitive impairment and dementia, pain aid scale is used. Pain assessment should be done immediately upon presentation at hospital and within 30 minutes of administering analgesia and early until settled in the ward. So the most common drug and safe drug used is the paracetamol, and it is given unless contraindicated. If pain is not controlled with paracetamol, opioids can be used as add-on therapy, but closely monitored for nausea, vomiting, constipation, and sedation side effects. NSAIDs are avoided due to their GI and renal toxicity. Nerve blocks can be considered if pain is not controlled with the oral analgesics. Skin traction and skeletal traction have no benefit in reducing the pain or improving surgical repair. So the best form of analgesia is to early surgical repair of the fracture. Coming to management of antiplatelets, guidelines on orthogeriatrics recommend moving ahead with surgery with aspirin and clopidogrel ongoing, but neuraxial anesthesia should be avoided. Studies have shown that administering aspirin in before surgery and during early post-surgical period did not affect the rate of death or non-fatal MI, but increased the risk of major bleeding occurring in significant number of patients, leading to hypotension and other complications like AKI, bleeding-related complications. So, managing antiplatelet in perioperative period should be based on the pharmacokinetic guided and the restoration of platelet function after stoppage of antiplatelet. So, in patient with high risk of bleeding, aspirin should be stopped 4 days prior to surgery, clopidogrel 5 to 7 days, prasugrel 7 to 10 days, and ticagrelor 3 to 5 days. And coming to anticoagulants, so direct oral anticoagulants should be stopped 24 hours before the surgery, and surgery should be delayed for 24 hours. If the patient is receiving warfarin, then it should be stopped, and INR should be targeted for less than 1.5. Vitamin K injection can be given if needed. In high risk patient, bridging therapy with low molecular weight heparin is recommended. Hip fracture patients are at high risk of thromboembolism. So, as soon as the patient comes to the hospital, mechanical thromboembolism prophylaxis should start. In patient with low molecular weight heparin, in patient with low risk of bleeding, low molecular weight heparin is recommended. If the patient is having renal failure, then unfractionated heparin is preferred over warfarin. Low molecular weight heparin should start 12 hours before the surgery, with second dose 12 hours after surgery, and continue it for 30 days. Alternative drugs are fondaparinux, direct oral anticoagulants. Patients who have contraindication for pharmacological prophylaxis, intermittent pneumatic compression should be given. Aspirin has also been used in thromboembolism prophylaxis in low thrombotic risk patients. So, in a dose of 81 mg per day after initial anticoagulant therapy for 5 to 10 days, it can reduce the risk of thromboembolism. The benefit is it has low cost, but yeah, it is not as effective as anticoagulant for preventing the thromboembolism. It may cause distal asymptomatic thrombosis. Sugar management in perioperative period is crucial. ADA targets sugar level of 110 to 180 mg per deciliter. If the patient is on oral hypoglycemic agents, SGLT2 inhibitors should be stopped 3 to 4 days prior to the surgery. Other agents can be continued. One dose should be withheld before the surgery. If the blood sugar level is uncontrolled, then stopping OHAs is recommended, and we should switch to basal bolus regime of insulin. If the patient is already receiving insulin, then patient's basal insulin should be continued. Dose reduction is considered. Reduce the dose by 10 to 25%. Prandial insulin should be withheld 1 dose before the surgery. Patient taking pre-mixed insulin, then reduce the evening dose by 20% and the morning dose by 50%. It can also be withheld if the sugar level is less than 120 mg per dl. Intraoperative blood sugar monitoring is important. If needed, short-acting insulin can be given. Once because the patient with hip fracture have lot of bleeding, so it is important to resuscitate the fluid when they come to emergency. They should receive a bolus of 5 to 10 ml per kg of fluid, followed by 1 liter of normal saline over next 8 hours. And electrolyte correction is to be done. Sodium if it is less than 120 or more than 150, potassium if it is less than 2.8 and more than 6, then correction should be done. Enteral feeding should be continued till the day of surgery. So, prior to surgery, hemoglobin concentration of patient should be targeted above 8. If it is more than 8, we can proceed for the surgery. If not, then transfusion is required. For perioperative cardiac evaluation, multiple risk assessment tools are available. RCRI, that is Revised Cardiac Risk Index tool, is the simple, validated, and most commonly used one. It has independent predictor of major cardiac complications. They are high risk surgery like intraoperative, intrathoracic, vascular, or intraperitoneal surgery, ischemic heart disease, history of congestive heart failure, history of cerebrovascular disease, insulin therapy for diabetes, and serum creatinine level more than 2. If the score is more than or equal to 1, we say the risk is high. So 2024 AHA guideline has given this stepwise approach for perioperative cardiac evaluation in patient undergoing non-cardiac surgery. So depending on the major risk modifier of perioperative cardiac complication, like severe valvular heart disease, severe pulmonary hypertension, elevated risk congenital heart diseases, prior coronary stent or CABG, recent stroke, presence of pacemaker and ICD, and frailty. And if the patient is having functional capacity of less than 4 metabolic equivalent, then patient needs further evaluation for the surgery. There is no role of routine echocardiography. It should be done in patient with history of significant valvular heart disease with no echo in last 1 year, significant unknown murmur, suspected heart failure, dyspnea of unknown origin. Surgery should be deferred if there is acute coronary syndrome, uncontrolled arrhythmia, and acute decompensated heart failure. Drugs used in cardiovascular diseases like beta blockers, statins, and calcium channel blockers should be continued. ACE inhibitor in ARBs, if they are indicated for hypertension, they should be stopped. If they are being used for reduced heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, they should be continued. For pulmonary evaluation, clinical examination and saturation monitoring is important. There is no role of routine chest X-ray, PFT, or ABG. Optimization of respiratory conditions like asthma, COPD is needed, and we should go ahead with surgery. If there is sign of pneumonia and LRTI, antibiotics should be started promptly. And lung expansion techniques, incentive spirometry, deep breathing techniques should be performed in the high-risk patients. Perioperative antibiotic prophylaxis is crucial to prevent the post-surgical infection. So cefazolin is the drug of choice. The second generation cephalosporin like cefuroxime, they have theoretically more coverage for gram-negative bacteria compared to cefazolin, but their resistance is increasing. In patient with penicillin resistance, clindamycin and vancomycin as the drug of choice. So when should we delay the surgery? Unstable coronary syndrome, decompensated heart failure, significant arrhythmia, severe valvular heart disease, and sepsis. We should go ahead with surgery when there is stable CAD, chronic compensated left ventricular failure, CKD, UTI with sepsis, and delirium. During intraoperative period, we should take care that we should take the patient for surgery as soon as possible, that is within 36 to 48 hours of presentation, and we should prefer daytime surgery when there are lot of manpower available in the hospital. Multidisciplinary coordination between orthopedician, anesthetist, and geriatrician is important, and choice of anesthesia plays crucial role in patients' rehabilitation and early mobilization. We should reduce the surgical stress and blood loss. The points to be taken care in post-operative period is early mobilization, prophylaxis for venous thromboembolism, antibiotic prophylaxis, urinary catheter utilization, pain control, preventing pressure ulcer, constipation, and delirium, and monitoring hemoglobin in post-op period, detecting malnutrition and correction of the nutritional support. Regular checkup of the vital physiological parameters and correction if needed. Identifying pulmonary complications like atelectasis and pneumonia, cardiac issues like MI, and heart failure and supraventricular arrhythmias. looking for surgical site infection actively, managing acute kidney injury, managing GI bleeding, and starting rehabilitation and secondary prevention of fracture as soon as possible. So the patient should be mobilized next day after the surgery until and unless medically and surgically contraindicated. Patient should be mobilized at least once a day. Urinary bladder catheter should be preferably removed within 24 hours of surgery, as it can lead to urinary tract infection, which is quite high after the surgery. So, which is common in post of 7 to 10 days of surgery. Drugs leading to urinary retention in like sedatives and anticholinergics should be stopped. Pulmonary complications are common after hip fracture surgery. They happen usually 24 to 48 hours post-op. To reduce the complications, regular monitoring of any signs of LRTI, swallow evaluation, head and elevation, and incentive spirometry and chest physiotherapy is needed. Delirium in post-op period is quite common. Identifying the cause of delirium and managing it pharmacologically and non-pharmacologically is important. Patient sensory stimulation, mobility enhancement, pain control, sleep enhancement, these are non-pharmacological options and very important. So other pharmacological management is haloperidol, atypical antipsychotics. They are commonly used, haloperidol having more side effects. There is no role of benzodiazepines. So secondary prevention of fragility fracture should start as soon as possible. This has been discussed in previous session in very detail, and this one slide is a checkpoint. So this will help us to check all the points whichever we have to take care in the immediate perioperative and post-operative period, so that we don't miss on any point and then we improve the patient outcome. These are my references, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavna, for a wonderful talk. It was very informative. I would like to just ask a small question: that what is the major criteria for selecting a patient with osteoporosis, severe osteoporosis, for the surgical procedure? Like not opting the medical management and opting the surgical management. What would be the major deciding factor for that?
So patient with in this fragility fracture, osteoporotic fracture, patient should be preferred for surgery until and unless they are in their end of life. For example, they are in last year of their life and then they have multiple contraindications where we cannot proceed for surgery, like arrhythmias, uncontrolled arrhythmias and uncontrolled heart failure. Mostly we should try for the fracture repairment, because it will improve the functional outcome of the patient as well as it will improve the quality of their life. So
Thank you.
We have maybe 15 seconds left. Anybody? If anyone has a question. I think activities of daily living prior to surgery and what are you expecting after the surgery is one among the crucial factors for deciding the answer for your question.
yeah.
Bhavna, just one question.
Yes, sir.
Some of the hospitals prefer that instead of low molecular weight heparin in frail people, it is good to use those pneumatic pumps to protect them from DVTs. What are your views on that?
Sir, this mechanical inpatient, frail patients are at increased risk of bleeding and comorbidities. So it is better to go for non-pharmacological management like pneumatic compression stocking. They will be beneficial.
Yeah, that's what we use in the hospital. We have seen good results. And the day you want, you just withdraw it. And no side effects, no drug interaction, no other problem. So
yes,
it's a good non-pharmacological. Especially in frail people, they use it. Secondly, they insist upon this thing that there should be not even a single day of negative calorie imbalance. So, post-operatively, you immediately have a parenteral nutrition therapy.
Yes, sir.
Followed by oral therapy as early as possible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctors.